My nephew Marcus had no idea that when he told me, "You're not my responsibility, Aunt Eleanor," after I asked for help getting groceries during my recovery from knee surgery, he was dismissing the woman who had been quietly funding his medical school tuition, his luxury apartment rent, his car payments, and his comfortable lifestyle for the past 8 years, through a private foundation, whose anonymous beneficiary status I could revoke with a single phone call. All because the ambitious medical resident who assumed his 72-year-old aunt represented an inconvenient burden during his important hospital rotations, never bothered to ask why he'd never received a single student loan bill, why his rent checks were mysteriously always prepaid by building management, and why his credit cards somehow never seemed to accumulate the debt that crushed his fellow medical students, who weren't secretly supported by the retired pharmaceutical executive whose modest apartment concealed a $40 million personal fortune, and whose helpless elderly relative persona he dismissed would soon transform into the foundation director, whose funding decisions could either continue supporting his medical career or immediately terminate every financial assistance program that had made his education possible. Before we dive into this incredible story of family abandonment, needing philanthropic justice, and the financial empire my ungrateful nephew never knew existed, make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment, telling me about your worst experience with family members who took your generosity for granted while treating you like a bird, and subscribe so you never miss stories like this one about what happens when entitled family members assume elderly relatives are helpless inconvenience, only to discover just how catastrophically wrong they can be when family disrespect meets the kind of financial authority that could transform their comfortable lifestyle into a harsh lesson about gratitude and the true meaning of family responsibility. My name is Eleanor Catherine Whitfield. I'm 72 years old, and this story begins on October 3, 2024, when I made what seemed like a simple request for my nephew Marcus to help me with grocery shopping after my scheduled knee replacement surgery, a routine family support expectation that would reveal my sister's son's true character and teach him the most expensive lesson about dismissing elderly relatives whose quiet generosity had been ensuring that promising young medical students maintained perfect financial stability, seamless educational supports, and the kind of anonymous philanthropic backing that determined whether ambitious medical residents could focus on their studies or spend their nights working multiple jobs to survive the crushing financial pressure that destroyed countless medical careers. To understand how my nephew Marcus James Caldwell, a 26-year-old third-year medical resident at Johns Hopkins Hospital earning $200 per month luxury apartment in Baltimore's most desirable Federal Hill neighborhood, ended up watching his comfortable lifestyle disappear through legitimate foundation protocols within 48 hours of telling his elderly aunt that her basic needs weren't his responsibility. You need to know was before my carefully maintained image, as a simple retiree, living on a modest pension, concealed the pharmaceutical industry expertise and financial authority that had elevated me from entry-level research assistant in 1978 to chief executive officer of Meridian Pharmaceutical, a position that required overseeing $2.8 billion in annual research funding and creating the private foundation network that determined educational support for over 400 promising medical students throughout the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. For 39 extraordinary years, I was Eleanor Whitfield, dedicated pharmaceutical professional at one of America's most innovative medical research companies, starting as a junior researcher, when gene therapy was experimental new science, and advancing through every level of corporate responsibility, until my retirement in 2017, as chief executive officer with authorization over ultra-high-value research grants, educational funding coordination, and medical scholarship systems that most people never understand or appreciate. My career had encompassed every aspect of pharmaceutical development, from basic laboratory research to complex multi-institutional medical education programs that determined whether promising students maintained their medical careers across decades, whether young researchers received appropriate educational support, and whether the next generation of medical professionals achieved the financial stability and educational excellence that distinguished successful healthcare innovation from inadequate training and medical career abandonment. The scope of my philanthropic responsibilities had grown to encompass managing educational funding for 27 medical students across 17 universities, coordinating with federal medical education authorities who required accurate documentation for scholarship compliance, implementing support protocols that balanced student needs with accountability requirements, designing educational assistance systems that synchronized funding documentation between medical schools, federal agencies, and private foundations, and troubleshooting financial complications that could affect everything from individual student success to multi-generational medical career development that influenced healthcare innovation and medical education excellence throughout the North American medical community. During my 4 decades of distinguished pharmaceutical service, I had personally overseen research funding for over $8,400 million in medical education grants, supervised coordination between 89 different universities and medical institutions across 3 countries, collaborated with federal medical education officials who required accurate regional data for policy analysis, and managed educational support protocols during student crises that required immediate coordination between medical schools, federal agents, and private foundations to ensure student stability while maintaining academic integrity and privacy protections that balanced educational access with scholarship optimization and federal compliance requirements. The transformation that I had witnessed and managed during my career was extraordinary, from manual scholarship documentation systems in traditional university filing cabinets to sophisticated encrypted platforms that could instantly verify student eligibility, academic status, financial need verification, and scholarship availability across global networks that connected individual medical education support to international pharmaceutical research systems. I had been personally responsible for training over 73 medical education professionals in scholarship administration protocols, federal compliance procedures, and educational funding techniques that required both advanced philanthropic expertise and deep understanding of medical education, federal scholarship regulations, and constitutional privacy protections. My position as Chief Executive Officer meant that I possessed what was essentially master-level access to the North American medical education funding network, the ability to classify scholarship eligibility, coordinate multi-institution educational distribution, implement emergency student support protocols, and evaluate beneficiary conduct that could instantly transform someone's educational status from guaranteed funding to comprehensive academic review, requiring extensive character evaluation, federal compliance verification to complete through proper philanthropic channels and documentation process. But perhaps the most significant aspect of my pharmaceutical career was my role in developing and implementing the automated scholarship administration protocols that determined how educational funding flowed between private foundations, federal education systems, beneficiary verification network, and student support coordination. I had personally written distribution specifications that guided scholarship management for dozens of North America's most promising medical students, established coordination procedures between medical schools and federal education authorities, and created evaluation protocols that ensured consistent, appropriate funding distribution across academic programs that served both individual student needs and medical education excellence requirements. The philanthropic infrastructure that I had helped design and implement served as the model for national medical education funding, with scholarship authorities in other regions consulting our protocols for guidance on educational management, student coordination, and compliance implementation that balanced beneficiary expectations with academic excellence optimization. My expertise had been featured in pharmaceutical industry publications and consulted by foundations throughout North America who wanted to implement similar scholarship administration systems and automated protocols that served both individual educational needs and multi-generational medical career development monitoring requirements. Marcus's comfortable life in his luxurious Federal Hill apartment, which he considered evidence of his medical school success and personal financial management, was actually supported by the kind of seamless educational planning and scholarship administration that I had been developing and maintaining throughout my entire career. The perfect academic funding that ensured his family maintained excellent financial flexibility, the smooth scholarship distributions that had helped him during his undergraduate to medical school transition 4 years ago, the comprehensive student support that enabled his aggressive study strategies, and the foundation coordination that provided tax optimization for his educational expenses, all depended on the kind of sophisticated philanthropic management and educational administration that required exactly the expertise I had been developing for over 3 decades. Marcus James Caldwell had achieved what appeared to be remarkable academic success as a third-year medical resident, specializing in emergency medicine at Johns Hopkins Hospital, one of America's most prestigious medical institutions. His residency program was consistently ranked among the top 5 emergency medicine training programs nationwide, and his academic performance had earned recognition from department faculty who considered him a candidate for chief resident position during his final year of training. His clinical evaluations consistently rated him in the top 10% of residents, and his research contributions to emergency medicine protocols had been published in peer-reviewed medical journals. The financial foundation that enabled Marcus's medical education success included not only his resident salary and academic achievements, but also the scholarship structure that I had carefully planned and coordinated through my pharmaceutical industry expertise. The private foundation that had been established to support his medical training provided monthly living assistance of $2,200, annual educational bonuses based on academic performance, and access to emergency funding facilities that enabled him to pursue competitive research opportunities without compromising his personal financial security or academic focus maintenance. Marcus's medical training reflected sophisticated academic planning and strategic positioning that prepared him for leadership roles in emergency medicine throughout the Mid-Atlantic region's most respected hospital. His clinical rotations included experience at trauma centers, pediatric emergency departments, and critical care facilities that provided comprehensive training in the most challenging aspects of emergency medical care. His research focus on emergency cardiac protocols had attracted attention from cardiology departments at major medical centers, seeking residents who understood both emergency response and advanced cardiac care. The success of Marcus's medical education had attracted attention from chief residents and attending physicians who considered him a candidate for fellowship training in emergency cardiology, a highly competitive subspecialty that could lead to department leadership positions and academic appointments at major medical centers. His current academic trajectory included research projects worth a combined $180,000 in federal grants, with preliminary results indicating strong potential for publication in top-tier medical journals and presentation at national emergency medicine conferences. But what made Marcus's academic achievement particularly impressive was his transition from undergraduate pre-medical studies to medical school acceptance, which required substantial academic preparation, sophisticated application strategy, and financial resources that distinguished successful medical students from failed applicants who underestimated the complexity and financial requirements of medical education. His success had been supported by strategic foundation investment and scholarship coordination that provided both academic funding and ongoing financial stability during the challenging years of medical school and residency training. The Federal Hill apartment where Marcus lived represented both his academic success and his commitment to maintaining the kind of sophisticated lifestyle that distinguished successful medical residents from those who compromised personal comfort for financial necessity. The beautifully appointed 2-bedroom residence featured modern amenities, study spaces optimized for medical education, and the kind of comfortable living environment that enabled Marcus to focus on academics rather than financial stress and housing complications that destroyed countless medical careers. The apartment building where Marcus resided was known throughout Baltimore's medical community as housing for successful residents and young physicians who could afford premium accommodations. The monthly rent of $3,200 exceeded what most medical residents could manage on their 1,000 annual salaries, but Marcus had never questioned why his housing payments were consistently processed as prepaid by building management, rather than requiring personal financial planning and monthly budget management that characterized his fellow residents' financial experiences. Marcus's fellow residents, many of whom lived in shared apartments or hospital-provided housing to manage their substantial student loan debt, had often commented on his financial freedom and ability to maintain an upscale lifestyle while pursuing medical training. The luxury car that he drove, 2022 BMW 3380i with monthly payments of $47, represented the kind of financial commitment that most medical students couldn't afford without compromising their educational expenses or accumulating additional debt that extended their financial obligations well beyond their residency completion. The credit cards that Marcus used for daily expenses, educational materials, and occasional travel never seemed to accumulate the crushing debt that characterized his classmates' financial experience. While his fellow residents worked part-time jobs at urgent care centers or medical clinics to supplement their income, Marcus maintained focus on his academic work and research projects without the financial pressure that forced most medical students to balance educational excellence with economic survival. Marcus's social life reflected the financial freedom that distinguished him from his peers who spent weekends working additional shifts or studying in shared library spaces to avoid apartment distractions. His regular activities included dining at Baltimore's finest restaurants, attending medical conferences that weren't covered by residency programs, and maintaining the kind of professional wardrobe that enabled him to present himself as a successful medical professional rather than a financially struggling student. The educational resources that Marcus accessed, medical textbooks, online learning platforms, conference attendance, and research materials, reflected comprehensive academic support that exceeded what most medical students could afford on resident salary. His personal medical library, worth over $8,000 in current textbooks and reference materials, provided him with academic advantages that many of his peers couldn't access due to financial constraints and student loan limitations. But what Marcus completely failed to understand was that comfortable lifestyle and academic advantages weren't the result of superior financial planning or personal achievement. They were the direct result of philanthropic support that I had been coordinating through my private foundation network for his entire medical education. The seamless financial experiences that he considered evidence of his personal success were actually carefully orchestrated support systems that required sophisticated foundation management and continuous coordination between educational institutions and funding organizations. The Whitfield Foundation for Medical Excellence, which I had established during the final years of my career at Meridian Pharmaceuticals, operated with an endowment of $12.4 million dedicated to supporting promising medical students who demonstrated both academic excellence and character potential. The Foundation's mission statement emphasized the importance of creating opportunities for medical students to focus on their education rather than financial survival, enabling the next generation of physicians to develop the skills and knowledge necessary for healthcare innovation and patient care excellence. The scholarship selection process that had identified Marcus as a foundation beneficiary 8 years earlier had been based on his academic achievement, medical school admission scores, and character assessment interviews that evaluated his potential for medical leadership and community contribution. The comprehensive evaluation that qualified him for foundation support included recommendations from academic advisors, community service documentation, and personal statements that demonstrated his commitment to medical excellence and patient care. But perhaps most importantly, the Foundation's beneficiary requirements included ongoing character assessment and demonstration of values that aligned with the Foundation's mission of creating physicians who understood both medical excellence and community responsibility. The scholarship agreement Medicus had signed, though he had never realized the true source of his funding, included specific provisions about maintaining character standards and demonstrating respect for family relationships and community obligations that distinguished responsible medical professionals from those prioritized personal advancement over community service and family loyalty. The Foundation's monitoring protocols included annual reviews of beneficiary academic progress, character development, assessment, and evaluation of how scholarship recipients treated family relationships and community obligations. The comprehensive evaluation process that determined continued funding eligibility wasn't limited to academic achievement. It included assessment of whether beneficiaries maintained the kind of character and values that justified continued investment in their medical education and professional development. Marcus's academic excellence and clinical performance had always met the Foundation's educational standard, but the character assessment component of his beneficiary status had never been formally evaluated because family relationships and community obligations hadn't been tested during his intensive academic focus. The Foundation's protocols included specific provisions for character review when beneficiaries demonstrated behavior that conflicted with the values of community service and family responsibility that the Foundation considered essential for ethical medical practice. The irony of being dismissed as not his responsibility by the family member whose medical career depended entirely on the educational funding and financial support that I had been coordinating and protecting throughout his medical training was not lost on me. The systematic dismissal that I had experienced during post-surgical vulnerability represented exactly the kind of character evidence that justified implementing comprehensive Foundation review protocols and educational funding reconsideration that could transform expected support into accountability assessment and care evaluation requirements. My modest apartment in Baltimore's Canton neighborhood, which Marcus had visited occasionally during family gatherings, and considered evidence of my limited financial circumstances, actually served as the East Coast Coordination Center for the Whitfield Foundation's operation. The simple furnishings and traditional decor that Marcus observed during his infrequent visits concealed sophisticated communication systems, encrypted internet connection, and Foundation management infrastructure that maintained direct connectivity with scholarship administrators at 17 universities and enabled immediate response to beneficiary emergencies or character assessment requirements. The home office that appeared to casual visitors as a simple retirement workspace with basic computer equipment actually contained specialized database systems and Foundation management hardware that provided direct access to scholarship administration network, emergency funding protocols for student support, and secure connections to federal education databases that required the highest levels of security clearance and professional authentication to access and maintain throughout the medical education funding community. The daily routine that Marcus occasionally observed during family visits, which he interpreted as simple retirement activities and limited social engagement, actually included coordinating scholarship distribution operations that affected over supervising emergency response protocols for funding crises that could disrupt educational access throughout multiple institutions, and providing administrative consultation for federal education officials who relied on accurate regional data for medical education policy analysis and scholarship development. October 3rd had begun as what appeared to be routine coordination of family medical support and academic obligations that should have been easily managed through basic family consideration and elderly care responsibility. My knee replacement surgery at Johns Hopkins Hospital had been scheduled for several weeks, with discharge planning that included confirmed family transportation arrangements and post-operative support that represented standard medical protocol and basic family obligation rather than unusual burden or exceptional demand on family members. The surgical procedure had been performed by Dr. Tricia Richardson, one of Baltimore's most respected orthopedic surgeons, whose expertise in knee replacement surgery had attracted patients from throughout the Mid-Atlantic region, seeking the highest quality medical care and optimal recovery outcome. The operation had proceeded perfectly with no complications or unexpected difficulties that might have required extended hospitalization or complex recovery procedures that could affect discharge timing or family coordination arrangements. Richardson's post-operative instructions included standard limitations on walking, driving, and independent mobility during the initial recovery period, which meant that family transportation and support were essential medical requirements, rather than optional convenience or personal preference. The discharge planning that hospital social workers had coordinated included verification of family support arrangements and assistance coordination that ensured patient safety and appropriate medical supervision during the critical first 7. Marcus had confirmed our coordination arrangements during my preoperative consultation 2 weeks earlier, expressing understanding of the timing requirements and family responsibilities that represented basic obligation and medical necessity. His acknowledgement of the October 3 discharge schedule had been documented in family planning records and included in my recovery coordination, creating legitimate expectations for family support and post-surgical assistance. But what made Marcus's systematic dismissal particularly devastating was his comfortable assumption that elderly relatives should accommodate medical residence schedules through independent problem-solving rather than expecting family support during surgical recovery. The casual language that he used to dismiss my grocery shopping request, "You're not my responsibility, Aunt Eleanor," revealed months of strategic thinking about family relationship management that prioritized medical career advancement over elderly care obligations. The conversation that continued after his dismissal revealed Marcus's complete confidence about family relationship management and his systematic approach to elderly obligation minimization that treated my post-surgical needs as complications requiring independent resolution rather than family responsibilities, deserve immediate attention and priority consideration. The comfortable dismissal that he employed demonstrated months of strategic calculation about family loyalty optimization and medical career advancement that justified dismissing elderly medical needs during important hospital rotation. Sometimes the most expensive mistake you can make is assuming that financial support and educational assistance are automatic entitlements that continue regardless of how the beneficiaries treat the elderly relatives whose generosity created their opportunities. The grocery shopping assistance that Marcus refused to provide during my medical recovery would become the documented evidence of character priorities that justified redirecting foundation resources and educational funding to serve more deserving medical students who understood the value of both educational support and elderly wisdom that created opportunities for meaningful medical careers and authentic community contribution. What my family never understood during all those years of treating me like a simple retiree who needed assistance with modern technology and medical appointments was that their comfortable assumption about my limited capabilities revealed their complete ignorance of the pharmaceutical empire I had built throughout the North American medical education community, an empire that operated so seamlessly and efficiently that its very invisibility had become its greatest strength and family's most dangerous vulnerability. The modest Canton neighborhood apartment, where I had lived for 8 years, which Marcus and my sister Patricia considered evidence of my limited financial success and outdated lifestyle choices, actually served as the primary coordination center for the East Coast Medical Education Funding Network, equipped with secured communication systems, encrypted internet connection, and philanthropic infrastructure that maintained 24/7 connectivity with medical schools throughout 17 states and enabled immediate response to scholarship emergencies that could affect millions of dollars in educational funding and student support activities. My living room, which appeared to casual visitors as a simple retirement space with traditional furniture and family photographs, contained sophisticated database systems
and foundation management hardware that provided direct access to the primary servers at the Whitfield Foundation. Backup communication protocols for emergency scholarship coordination, and secure connections to federal education databases that required the highest levels of security clearance and professional authentication to access and maintain throughout the medical education funding community. The technology setup that I had installed throughout my apartment represented over $280,000 in specialized equipment and software licensing that enabled me to coordinate scholarship distribution activities, respond to student emergencies, and maintain the philanthropic infrastructure that supported dozens of North America's most promising medical students throughout the United States, Canada, and selected international programs. The multiple high-resolution monitors that lined my home office walls displayed real-time status information from scholarship databases across 17 states, automated alert systems that notified me of funding errors or compliance issues requiring immediate attention, and coordination interfaces that allowed me to communicate with medical education professionals, federal education officials, and foundation administrators throughout the North American region.
But beyond the physical infrastructure that supported my foundation coordination responsibilities, what made my home-based operations particularly powerful was the comprehensive network of professional relationships and federal coordination protocols that I had developed throughout my 39-year career in pharmaceutical research and medical education funding. The daily phone calls that my family occasionally overheard weren't social conversations with retired colleagues. They were strategic consultations with federal education administrators, crisis coordination with university financial aid officials, and technical support for medical schools that processed millions of dollars in daily scholarship distribution throughout the United States and Canada. The Whitfield Institute for Medical Education Excellence, which I had established during the final years of my career at Meridian Pharmaceutical, had become the most respected medical scholarship training program in the United States, providing advanced education for financial aid coordinators, federal compliance officials, and medical education professionals who needed expertise in multi-institution scholarship integration, philanthropic protocol implementation, and crisis response coordination that maintained student stability during funding emergencies and distribution complications. Our institute accepted only 12 participants annually through an application process more competitive than federal administrative positions, requiring extensive experience in medical education funding, scholarship administration, or philanthropic management before candidates qualified for consideration. The program fee of $225,000 reflected both the specialized nature of our training and the career advancement opportunities that graduation provided for education professionals seeking leadership positions in federal education agencies, university administration, or private foundation organization. The waiting list for admission to the Whitfield Institute extended over 6 years, with applications from senior administrative professionals at major medical schools, federal education officials seeking advanced scholarship management training, and university administrators responsible for financial aid coordination and educational funding. Oversight throughout multiple northeastern states. We regularly declined applications from Fortune 500 corporate executives who lacked the specialized knowledge of medical education systems and federal scholarship regulations that distinguished our program from general financial education and basic philanthropic training. What made our program unique wasn't just the administrative training quality, it was the federal coordination experience and professional networking opportunities that came with graduation from the most respected medical education funding program in North American scholarship administration. Whitfield Institute graduates received automatic consideration for federal education positions that never advertised openings, gained access to our network of education professionals and federal funding officials, and could leverage our consultation services to build careers in medical education funding that would be impossible to achieve through traditional university education and standard scholarship administration advance. The advanced curriculum that we provided included hands-on training in federal scholarship integration protocols, emergency response coordination during student crises, multi-institution funding coordination, medical education database management, and compliance implementation that protected student privacy while maintaining educational access and federal education monitoring capability. Our graduates managed scholarship databases for federal education agencies, coordinated philanthropic operations for major metropolitan areas, and supervised funding operations for medical schools that handled billions of dollars in annual educational assets. But perhaps the most significant aspect of the Whitfield Institute was our role in developing and implementing the next generation of medical education funding protocols that would determine how scholarship resources were managed, secured, and coordinated between private philanthropic organizations and federal education databases. The graduates from our program were leading administrative innovation at organizations like the Association of American Medical Colleges, the American Medical Student Association, and major university systems, implementing compliance protocols for federal education agencies and coordinating funding management for state education systems throughout the United States and Canada. The professional relationships that had developed through our institute included direct connections with senior executives at every major medical school, federal education officials responsible for national scholarship coordination, and administrative professionals who managed funding systems for state governments, university financial aid offices, and municipal education development departments throughout North America and selected international medical education programs. These relationships represented decades of professional collaboration and mutual respect that created opportunities for strategic coordination and immediate response capabilities that most philanthropic professionals could never access or afford. My daily routine, which my family observed during their infrequent visits, and considered evidence of simple retirement activities and limited social engagement, actually included coordinating scholarship distribution operations that affected over supervising emergency response protocols for funding failures that could disrupt medical education throughout multiple states, and providing administrative consultation for federal education officials who relied on accurate regional data for national policy analysis and scholarship allocation development. The morning schedule that began each day at 5:15 a.m. included reviewing overnight system alerts from scholarship databases across 17 states, analyzing automated error reports that identified potential compliance issues or funding integrity problems requiring immediate attention, coordinating with federal education databases that synchronized with our regional systems during off-peak hours, and implementing system updates that maintained compliance protocols and improved database performance for millions of educational records and scholarship trends. The afternoon coordination activities included supervising funding integration between university financial aid offices and federal agencies, troubleshooting system errors that affected scholarship allocation visibility and student application processing, coordinating with federal education officials who needed accurate regional data for policy analysis and funding development, and managing crisis response protocols during natural disasters that required immediate coordination between multiple state agencies and private philanthropic organizations. The evening consultation work included providing administrative guidance for education professionals who encountered funding errors or system integration problems, coordinating with international medical schools that implemented our protocols for scholarship management systems in other countries, and conducting strategic planning with federal education officials who relied on our expertise for national database modernization and compliance enhancement initiatives. But beyond the administrative coordination responsibilities that occupied most of my daily schedule, what made my medical education expertise particularly valuable was my comprehensive understanding of how scholarship systems affected individual students and medical communities throughout the United States and Canada. Every student who received timely scholarship distribution, every medical school that operated efficiently, every research grant that reached appropriate recipients, and every emergency response that coordinated effectively represented the successful implementation of systems and protocols that I had spent decades developing, refining, and maintaining. The Meridian Pharmaceutical Organization, where I had spent my entire career, wasn't just a regional pharmaceutical contractor, it was the exclusive provider of coordination services for the Federal Medical Education Administration's North American Regional Integration Network, coordinating medical education funding for over 1,000 Hayden municipal jurisdictions, 43 major metropolitan medical education areas, and managing distribution, integration with 206 different university financial aid offices across 17 states. Our systems processed over $6.2 billion in annual scholarship transactions, coordinated educational funding for over 6,830 different medical schools and education organizations, and maintained the infrastructure that enabled platforms like federal student aid, private medical schools, and foundation networks to provide effective scholarship management and educational funding for thousands of North American medical students. The scope of our funding management operations required coordination with the Department of Education for scholarship compliance and audit support, the Department of Health and Human Services for medical education program integration, the Internal Revenue Service for educational tax compliance verification, the Department of Treasury for federal funding program coordination, and the Department of Homeland Security for educational funding verification and security monitoring that supported both individual privacy protection and national security requirements. My security clearance level required annual background investigations, financial audits, psychological evaluations, and professional competency assessments that ensured only the most qualified and trustworthy education professionals maintained access to systems that could affect national scholarship programs, regional student stability, and federal education policy development. The clearance process included polygraph examinations, extensive interviews with professional colleagues and federal officials, and continuous monitoring that verified my continued reliability and commitment to maintaining the highest standards of professional integrity and system security. The administrative innovations that I had developed during my career included automated integration protocols that synchronized scholarship data between university financial aid databases and federal education system compliance algorithms that protected student privacy while maintaining educational accessibility, error detection systems that identified funding irregularities before they affected student finance, and crisis response protocols that maintained system stability during equipment failures or cybersecurity incidents that could affect millions of educational records and billions of dollars in scholarship activity. These innovations had been adopted by medical schools throughout North America, implemented by federal education agencies for national database modernization, and licensed to international education organizations that wanted to implement similar integration systems and compliance protocols for medical education management in European Union countries, Australia, New Zealand, Pacific Rim nations, seeking to modernize their scholarship systems and improve funding coordination between government agencies and private philanthropic organizations. The consulting contracts that I had negotiated with federal education agencies included ongoing administrative support for database modernization projects, emergency response coordination during system failures that affected multiple states, compliance assessment and enhancement for federal scholarship databases, and strategic planning for next-generation education technology that would improve system integration and reduce funding management costs while maintaining accuracy and security standards that protected both individual student privacy and federal education monitoring capability. But perhaps the most significant aspect of my scholarship administration authority was my role in determining which students received priority processing and optimal funding visibility throughout the North American Regional Medical Education Network. The integration protocols that I had designed included automated quality assessment algorithms that evaluated scholarship applications for appropriateness and completeness, determined funding positioning based on student need and academic status, and implemented enhanced allocation protocols for students who met the highest standards for educational impact and career potential. This meant that students associated with my family members had always received the most favorable scholarship treatment possible, priority processing for funding coordination,
enhanced distribution visibility that attracted maximum educational benefit, expedited application coordination that reduced approval timeframes, and automated compliance verification that prevented administrative problems from affecting their educational access or scholarship status. The seamless financial aid experiences that Marcus had always enjoyed weren't natural consequences of academic excellence or superior application management. They were the direct result of scholarship preferences and administrative advantages that I had been providing through my coordination authority and system access. Marcus's comfortable life in his Federal Hill apartment had benefited from perfect educational services coordination, seamless scholarship distribution process, and enhanced funding allocation that attracted maximum educational support because I had personally implemented distribution protocols that ensured optimal scholarship visibility and funding accuracy. The smooth application approval processes that had helped him during his undergraduate to medical school transition 4 years ago had benefited from expedited verification and automated compliance checking that reduced approval timeframes and prevented common administrative delays that affected most scholarship applications. The comprehensive financial aid services that enabled his comfortable lifestyle reflected funding coordination that I had maintained between university financial aid systems and federal education databases, preventing the service gaps and administrative complications that could have significantly affected his access to educational funding and student support. The excellent financial aid that supported his medical education, the emergency funding programs that provided additional support, and the scholarship infrastructure that supported his living expenses all depended on educational coordination and funding management that required exactly the kind of administrative expertise and federal coordination that I had been providing throughout my entire career. Marcus James Caldwell presented himself to the world as a self-made medical success story, the ambitious son of middle-class parents who had earned his way into medical school through academic excellence and personal determination. His carefully constructed narrative of individual achievement and personal responsibility reflected the kind of bootstrap mythology that resonated with his fellow residents and attending physicians, who admired his apparent financial independence and academic focus. The story that Marcus told about his educational journey emphasized his undergraduate achievements at the University of Virginia, where he had graduated summa cum laude with a degree in biochemistry while maintaining a 3.94 GPA and scoring in the 96th percentile on the MCAT examination. His medical school admission to Johns Hopkins, one of the most competitive medical programs in the United States, had been celebrated by family and friends as evidence of his exceptional academic ability and dedication to medical excellence. During medical school, Marcus had distinguished himself through clinical rotations that earned him honors grades in internal medicine, surgery, and emergency medicine, leading to his competitive selection for the emergency medicine residency program at Johns Hopkins Hospital. His research contributions during medical school had included publication of 3 peer-reviewed articles on emergency cardiac protocols and presentation of research findings at 2 national medical conferences. The academic achievements that Marcus proudly displayed in his apartment, framed diplomas, academic awards, and research certificates, told the story of a dedicated medical student who had earned every opportunity through intellectual rigor and professional commitment. His medical school dean's list recognitions, clinical excellence awards, and research fellowship selections created a comprehensive picture of academic success that justified his confident approach to medical career development. But what Marcus's carefully curated success narrative completely omitted was any acknowledgement of the financial support system that had made his academic achievements possible. The scholarship funding that had covered his $63,000 annual medical school tuition, the living stipends that had enabled him to focus on studies rather than part-time employment, and the emergency financial assistance that had provided stability during unexpected expenses, all remained invisible in his personal story of individual achievement and self-reliance. The lifestyle that Marcus maintained during medical school and residency reflected financial freedom that distinguished him from his peers, who struggled with student loan debt exceeding $200,000, worked weekend shifts at urgent care centers to supplement their income, and lived in shared apartments or hospital-provided housing to manage their financial obligations. Marcus's ability to maintain a luxury apartment, drive a premium vehicle, and pursue research opportunities without financial pressure created a comfortable buffer that enabled him to excel academically while his classmates balanced educational demands with economic survival. Marcus's social media presence, which he maintained to network with medical professionals and document his career progression, featured photographs of professional conferences, fine dining experiences, and travel opportunities that reflected the lifestyle of a successful young physician, rather than a financially struggling medical resident. His Instagram and LinkedIn profiles showcased clinical achievements, research presentations, and professional networking activities that reinforced his image as a rising star in emergency medicine. The professional wardrobe that Marcus maintained, tailored suits for conferences, premium scrubs for clinical work, and appropriate attire for medical networking events, reflected investment in his professional image that exceeded what most residents could afford on their limited salary. His collection of medical textbooks, reference materials, and educational resources represented thousands of dollars in academic investment that distinguished his preparation from residents who relied on library resources and shared materials to manage their educational expenses. Marcus's approach to professional development included membership in medical associations, attendance at optional conferences, and participation in research projects that required time and financial investment beyond the basic requirements of his residency program. His additional certifications, continuing education credits, and professional networking activities reflected comprehensive career planning that assumed financial stability and freedom from the economic pressures that limited his peers' professional development opportunities. The confidence that Marcus displayed in professional settings reflected his comfortable assumption that his lifestyle and opportunities were the natural result of his academic achievements and personal capability. His interactions with attending physicians, fellow residents, and medical school faculty demonstrated the self-assurance of someone who had never experienced financial insecurity or questioned the stability of his educational support system. But perhaps the most revealing aspect of Marcus's character was his complete lack of curiosity about the financial mechanisms that supported his comfortable lifestyle. The scholarship letters that arrived without application processes, the rent payments that processed without personal financial management, and the emergency funding that appeared during unexpected expenses never prompted questions about the source or sustainability of his financial support system. The attitude that Marcus had developed toward family relationships reflected his comfortable assumption that his success was entirely self-generated, and that elderly relatives represented obligations that interfered with his professional advancement rather than potential sources of wisdom, support, connection. His approach to family gatherings, holiday visits, and elderly care responsibilities demonstrated the kind of calculated relationship management that prioritized professional networking over traditional family values. Marcus's treatment of our family's elderly members, including his grandmother, great-aunts, and elderly family friends, reflected systematic dismissal of their potential contributions to his life and career. His conversations during family events focused on his medical achievements and career progression, while treating elderly relatives' stories, experiences, and perspectives as irrelevant interruptions to his professional networking and personal advancement. The language that Marcus used to describe family obligations revealed his fundamental approach to relationship management and his systematic calculation of which connections deserved his time and attention. His comfortable dismissal of elderly relatives as not his responsibility reflected months of strategic thinking about family relationship optimization that treated traditional obligations as obstacles to overcome rather than values to maintain and honor. During family gatherings at holiday celebrations, Marcus's behavior demonstrated his systematic approach to managing elderly relatives and his professional assessment of which family interactions contributed to his career advancement. His tendency to spend family events networking with younger relatives who worked in medical fields while avoiding extended conversations with elderly family members revealed his calculated approach to relationship management and personal advancement. The casual confidence that Marcus displayed when discussing his future career plans, fellowship training, academic appointment, and eventual private practice opportunities reflected his comfortable assumption that his financial support system would continue indefinitely without requiring acknowledgement, gratitude, or reciprocal family responsibility. His long-term planning included expensive fellowship programs, research opportunities, and career development investments that assumed continued financial stability without any recognition of the philanthropic infrastructure that made his ambitious planning possible. Marcus's apartment in Federal Hill served as both his residence and his primary social space for networking with other medical professionals, hosting study groups with fellow residents, and entertaining attending physicians who might provide career advancement opportunities. The sophisticated entertaining that he conducted, dinner parties featuring premium wine and catered food, professional networking events with carefully curated guest lists, and academic discussions that reinforced his reputation as a serious medical scholar, required financial resources that exceeded typical resident capabilities. The monthly expenses that Marcus maintained without apparent financial stress included dining at Baltimore's finest restaurant, membership at an exclusive fitness club, regular travel to medical conferences and professional development events, and entertainment activities that enabled him to maintain the social connections and professional relationships that supported his career advancement. His ability to participate in expensive professional activities without the financial constraints that limited his peers created networking opportunities and career advantages that distinguished his professional development from residents who focused solely on clinical training due to economic limitations. But what made Marcus's lifestyle particularly ironic was his complete lack of awareness that his comfortable financial position was temporary and conditional rather than permanent and guaranteed. The foundation protocols that supported his educational funding included specific provisions, character assessment, and ongoing evaluation of whether beneficiaries maintained the values and behaviors that justified continued philanthropic investment in their medical education and professional development. The scholarship agreement that Marcus had signed 8 years early, though he had never understood its true source or conditions, included explicit requirements for maintaining character standards that aligned with the Foundation's mission of creating physicians who understood both medical excellence and community responsibility. The comprehensive evaluation process that determined continued funding eligibility included assessment of how beneficiaries treated family relationships, community obligations, and elderly relatives who represented the traditional values that the Foundation considered essential for ethical medical practice. Marcus's systematic dismissal of elderly family members and his calculated approach to family relationship management represented exactly the kind of character evidence that triggered Foundation review protocols and scholarship eligibility reconsideration. The comfortable assumption that financial support would continue regardless of his treatment of elderly relatives revealed his fundamental misunderstanding of the values-based philanthropic system that had been supporting his medical education and comfortable lifestyle throughout his academic career. The Foundation's monitoring systems, which Marcus had never discovered or investigated, included annual character assessments based on feedback from family members, community observation, and evaluation of whether scholarship recipients demonstrated the kind of professional behavior and personal values that justified continued investment in their medical education. The comprehensive evaluation process that determined funding continuation wasn't limited to academic performance, and it included assessment of character development, community engagement, family relationship management that distinguished responsible medical professionals from those who prioritized personal advancement over traditional values and community contribution. Sometimes the most dangerous assumption you can make about financial support and educational assistance is that they represent permanent entitlements that continue automatically regardless of character development and family relationship management. The elderly relatives who Marcus dismissed as not his responsibility included the very person whose philanthropic expertise and financial authority had created every educational opportunity and lifestyle advantage that he considered evidence of his individual achievement and personal success in competitive medical education environments, required both academic excellence and character integrity to navigate successfully. The foundation infrastructure that had operated invisibly throughout Marcus's comfortable assumptions about his financial independence would soon become the most visible lesson of his life about the true meaning of educational philanthropy and the critical importance of treating elderly relatives with the respect and appreciation that their lifetime of professional service and generous support deserved, rather than dismissing them as outdated inconveniences during medical career advancement and professional development activities that prioritized individual achievement over authentic family relationships and traditional values. The world that Marcus James Caldwell had constructed around himself at Johns Hopkins Hospital represented the pinnacle of medical achievement and professional confidence, a carefully curated environment where his status as one of the hospital's most promising emergency medicine residents provided daily validation of his belief that success came through individual excellence and strategic career management, rather than external support or family assistance. His position within the prestigious Johns Hopkins Emergency Medicine program had become the foundation for a professional identity that celebrated self-reliance, academic achievement, and the kind of sophisticated medical expertise that distinguished elite physicians from ordinary healthcare workers.
The emergency department at Johns Hopkins Hospital, where Marcus spent his days managing critical patient care and complex medical emergencies, operated as one of the most advanced trauma centers on the East Coast, treating over 8,000 patients annually and serving as the primary emergency care facility for Baltimore's metropolitan area. The Level 1 Trauma Center designation that Johns Hopkins maintained required the highest standards of medical care, the most advanced emergency equipment, and the kind of specialized medical staff that included only the most qualified emergency medicine residents and attending physicians. Marcus's daily responsibilities within this prestigious medical environment included managing multiple critical patients simultaneously, coordinating with specialist consultants throughout the hospital system, implementing advanced emergency protocols for cardiac arrest, trauma, and critical care situations, and supervising medical students who sought to learn emergency medicine techniques from the hospital's most accomplished residents. His clinical performance evaluations consistently rated him in the top 5% with attending physicians noting his exceptional diagnostic skills, calm demeanor under pressure, and natural leadership abilities that suggested strong potential for chief resident selection and future academic appointment. The professional recognition that Marcus had earned throughout his residency training included publication of research in the Journal of Emergency Medicine, presentation of clinical findings at the American College of Emergency Physicians annual conference, and collaboration with senior attending physicians on protocol development that improved emergency cardiac care throughout the hospital system. His research focus on emergency management of acute coronary syndrome had attracted attention from cardiology departments at major medical centers and positioned him as a candidate for competitive fellowship training in emergency cardiology. But beyond his clinical achievements and research contributions, what made Marcus's position at Johns Hopkins particularly prestigious was his selection for the hospital's elite resident leadership program, an exclusive development track that accepted only 6 residents annually from across all medical specialties. The program provided additional training in medical administration, healthcare policy, and leadership development that prepared selected residents for department chair positions and academic leadership roles at major medical institutions throughout the United States. The elite resident leadership program that Marcus had joined during his second year of residency required participation in monthly seminars with hospital executives, quarterly rotations through different administrative departments, and annual presentations to the board of directors about resident perspectives on healthcare delivery and medical education excellence. The program fee of $15,000 annually was typically covered through competitive scholarships or hospital funding for residents who demonstrated exceptional leadership potential and academic achievement. Marcus's comfortable assumption that his elite resident leadership program participation represented recognition of his individual merit and academic excellence reflected his systematic approach to career advancement and his confident belief that professional opportunities naturally flowed to deserving candidates who demonstrated superior performance and strategic thinking. His participation in executive meetings, administrative rotations, and leadership development activities provided networking opportunities and career advancement that distinguished him from residents who focused solely on clinical training without strategic professional development. The monthly seminars that Marcus attended as part of the Elite Resident Leadership Program included presentations by department chairs, hospital administrators, and medical industry executives, who shared insights about healthcare leadership, medical practice management, and the business aspects of medical care that determined institutional success and professional advancement. These exclusive educational opportunities provided Marcus with knowledge about healthcare economics, medical administration, and strategic planning that exceeded what typical residents learn during their clinical training. The networking opportunities that accompanied Marcus's Elite Resident Leadership Program participation included regular interaction with Johns Hopkins executives, visiting medical leaders from other prestigious institutions, and healthcare industry professionals who managed billion-dollar medical systems and influenced national healthcare policy. The professional relationships that Marcus developed through these exclusive events created career opportunities and advancement possibilities that would have been impossible to access through standard residency training and clinical education. Marcus's apartment in Federal Hill had become an extension of his professional networking strategy, serving as an elegant venue for hosting medical colleagues, attending physician and fellow Elite Resident Leadership Program participants who appreciated the sophisticated environment and premium amenities that distinguished Marcus's living situation from typical resident housing. The monthly dinner parties that Marcus organized featured carefully curated guest lists, premium catering, and wine selections that reflected his understanding of professional entertaining and relationship management. The social events that Marcus coordinated through his apartment included quarterly gatherings for Elite Resident Leadership Program participants, monthly networking dinners for emergency medicine residents and attending physician, and annual celebrations that brought together medical professionals from across Johns Hopkins Hospital's various departments. These sophisticated social activities required substantial financial investment in catering, premium beverages, and entertainment that exceeded what most residents could afford on their limited salary. The professional wardrobe that Marcus maintained for his Elite Resident Leadership Program activities included tailored suits for executive meetings, premium dress shirts and ties for administrative rotations, and sophisticated casual wear for networking events and social gatherings. His investment in professional appearance reflected his understanding that career advancement in academic medicine required not only clinical excellence, but also the kind of polished presentation that distinguished future medical leaders from ordinary physicians. The continuing education activities that Marcus pursued beyond his residency requirements included membership in multiple medical associations, subscription to premium medical journals, and attendance at optional conferences that provided additional training in emergency medicine techniques and healthcare leadership. His professional development investments reflected comprehensive career planning that assumed continued financial stability and freedom from the economic pressures that limited his peers' educational opportunity. Marcus's approach to professional relationships within Johns Hopkins Hospital demonstrated his systematic understanding of career advancement and his strategic cultivation of connections that could influence his future opportunities in academic medicine. His interactions with attending physicians, department administrators, and hospital executives reflected careful relationship management that prioritized professional networking over casual social connections or traditional mentorship relationships. The research projects that Marcus pursued during his residency training included collaboration with senior physicians on studies that examined emergency medicine protocols, quality improvement initiatives that enhanced patient care delivery, and clinical trials that contributed to evidence-based medicine development. His research productivity exceeded the typical expectations for emergency medicine residents and positioned him as a candidate for academic positions that combined clinical practice with scholarly activity. But perhaps the most significant aspect of Marcus's professional confidence was his systematic approach to managing family obligations and personal relationships that he perceived as potential obstacles to his medical career advance. The strategic thinking that he applied to family relationship management reflected his comfortable assumption that professional success required prioritizing career development over traditional family responsibilities and elderly care obligations. The time management system that Marcus had developed for balancing his demanding residency schedule with professional development activities included specific protocols for minimizing family obligations and social commitments that didn't contribute to his career advance. His calendar management reflected systematic prioritization of medical training, research activities, and professional networking over family gatherings, elderly care responsibilities, and traditional social obligations. Marcus's communication patterns with family members demonstrated his strategic approach to relationship management and his calculated assessment of which family interactions deserved his time and attention. His phone calls and text messages with relatives focused on professional updates and career achievements, while avoiding discussions of family needs, elderly care responsibilities, or traditional obligations that might require his time or emotional investment. The financial planning that Marcus conducted for his post-residency career included assumptions about fellowship training, academic appointment, and eventual private practice opportunities that reflected his confident expectation of continued professional advancement and increased earning potential. His long-term planning included expensive fellowship programs, research sabbaticals, and career development investments that assumed financial stability without any recognition of the external support system that made his ambitious planning possible. Marcus's social media presence reflected his systematic approach to professional image management and his strategic use of digital platforms to enhance his reputation within the medical community. His LinkedIn profile featured regular updates about clinical achievements, research presentations, and professional development activities that reinforced his image as a rising star in emergency medicine. His Instagram account showcased professional conferences, medical education events, and networking activities that demonstrated his commitment to career excellence and professional advancement. The medical conferences that Marcus attended beyond his residency requirements included National Emergency Medicine Meeting, specialized training workshops, and leadership development seminars that provided additional credentials and networking opportunities. His conference attendance reflected investment in professional development that exceeded typical resident activities and positioned him as a serious candidate for competitive fellowship training and academic appointment. Marcus's membership in professional organizations included the American College of Emergency Physicians, the Society for Academic Emergency Medicine, and the American Medical Association, providing access to professional resources, networking opportunity, and career development support that enhanced his professional standing within the medical community. His active participation in these organizations included committee membership, volunteer activities, and leadership roles that demonstrated his commitment to medical professional excellence. The peer relationships that Marcus maintained within Johns Hopkins Hospital reflected his strategic approach to professional networking and his systematic cultivation of connections with fellow residents who might become future colleagues, referral sources, or career advancement resources. His interactions with other residents focused on professional development rather than personal friendship, creating a network of medical professionals who could support his long-term career objective. Marcus's relationship with attending physicians demonstrated his understanding of academic medicine hierarchy and his strategic approach to mentorship and professional guidance. His interactions with senior physicians focused on learning opportunities, research collaboration, and career advice that could influence his fellowship applications and future academic appointments. The respect that he earned from attending physicians reflected his clinical competence and professional demeanor that distinguished him as a future leader in emergency medicine. The clinical skills that Marcus had developed during his residency training included advanced cardiac life support, trauma management, critical care procedures, and emergency diagnostic techniques that positioned him as one of the hospital's most capable residents. His procedural competence, diagnostic accuracy, and patient management skills earned recognition from attending physicians and nurses who considered him a reliable and effective emergency medicine practitioner. But what made Marcus's professional confidence particularly problematic was his systematic application of medical training principles to family relationship management, treating elderly relatives like clinical problems that required efficient resolution rather than family members who deserved respect, attention, and care. The analytical thinking that served him well in emergency medicine became a tool for optimizing family obligations and minimizing time investment in relationships that didn't contribute to his professional advancement. The decision-making framework that Marcus applied to family situations reflected his medical training in triage and resource allocation, prioritizing urgent professional demands over routine family needs and treating elderly care responsibilities as non-critical issues that could be deferred or delegated to other family members. His systematic approach to family relationship management demonstrated how professional training could distort personal values when career advancement became the primary measure of success and importance. Marcus's comfortable assumption that family support should accommodate his medical demands reflected months of strategic thinking about relationship optimization and his systematic calculation that elderly relatives should understand and support his professional priorities rather than expecting traditional family consideration and care. The confidence that he displayed about family relationship management revealed his belief that medical career advancement justified treating family obligations as optional expenses rather than essential responsibility. The language that Marcus used to describe family interactions revealed his systematic approach to relationship management and his professional assessment of which family activities deserved his time and attention. His tendency to discuss family gatherings in terms of time investment, elderly care in terms of resource allocation, and family responsibilities in terms of opportunity costs demonstrated how completely his medical training had influenced his approach to personal relationships and family value. During conversations with fellow residents about family obligations, Marcus often shared his philosophy about maintaining professional focus and avoiding family complications that could interfere with career advancement. His systematic approach to family relationship management had become a topic of discussion among his peers, with some residents admiring his strategic thinking, while others questioned whether his professional focus had compromised his understanding of family values and traditional obligations. The Elite Resident Leadership Program seminars that Marcus attended included sessions on work-life balance, professional relationship management, and healthcare leadership that emphasized the importance of strategic thinking and efficient resource allocation in medical career development. The program's emphasis on optimization and strategic planning reinforced Marcus's systematic approach to relationship management and provided professional validation. Marcus's quarterly performance evaluations within the Elite Resident Leadership Program consistently rated him as exceptional in strategic thinking, outstanding in professional development, and superior in leadership potential, providing regular validation of his systematic approach to career advancement and relationship management. The program feedback that he received from hospital executives and department chairs reinforced his confidence about professional priorities and strategic family relationship optimization. The annual review process for Elite Resident Leadership Program participants included evaluation of leadership skills, professional judgment, and character assessment that measured residents' potential for future administrative and academic responsibility. Marcus's consistent excellent ratings in professional competence and strategic thinking provided validation of his systematic approach to career development and relationship management that prioritized professional advancement over traditional family values. But what Marcus completely failed to understand was that his systematic approach to family relationship management and his professional prioritization of career advancement over elderly care responsibilities created comprehensive documentation of character priorities that could affect his continued access to the educational funding and financial support
that made his comfortable lifestyle and professional development possible. The strategic thinking that he applied to family relationship optimization had generated detailed evidence of his approach to treating elderly relatives and traditional values that would determine his continued eligibility for Foundation's support. The confidence that Marcus displayed about his professional achievements and career advancement reflected his assumption that his success was entirely self-generated and that external support systems were irrelevant to his continued professional development. The systematic dismissal of family obligations that he had developed through his medical training would become documented evidence of character priorities that distinguished deserving scholarship recipients from those who required character evaluation and funding. Resident leadership program that had provided Marcus with executive training and career advancement opportunities included specific expectations about character development and professional values that extended beyond clinical competence to include assessment of how program participants treat family relationships and community obligations. The program's emphasis on healthcare leadership included evaluation of whether residents demonstrated the kind of character and values that qualified them for positions of responsibility and community trust. The Johns Hopkins Hospital environment that had nurtured Marcus's professional confidence and career advancement operated within a medical community that valued both clinical excellence and character, recognizing that future medical leaders needed to demonstrate not only technical competence, but also the kind of personal values that created trust and respect within their community. The systematic evaluation of residents' character development included assessment of how they managed family relationships and elderly care responsibilities that revealed their understanding of professional obligations and community service. Marcus's comfortable assumption that his medical career advancement justified systematic dismissal of elderly family members represented exactly the kind of character evidence that triggered evaluation protocols within educational institutions and funding organizations that supported medical training. The professional success that he had achieved through his residence training would soon be measured against character standards that included assessment of family loyalty, elderly respect, and traditional values that distinguished responsible medical professionals from those who prioritized personal advancement over community service and family obligation. Sometimes the most dangerous aspect of professional success is the confidence it creates about the permanence of support systems and the assumption that achievement grants immunity from accountability for character development and family relationship management. The medical career that Marcus had built through systematic professional advancement and strategic relationship optimization would soon be evaluated through criteria that measured not only clinical competence, but also the character integrity and family values that determined whether promising medical professionals deserved continued support and advancement opportunities in competitive academic medicine environment that required both professional excellence and personal integrity to navigate successfully. October 3, 2024, began as what should have been a routine coordination of family medical support and professional obligations, a simple request that would expose the true character of the nephew, whose medical career I had been secretly funding for 8 years, and trigger the most comprehensive demonstration of philanthropic authority that the North American medical education community had ever witnessed. The morning started with my successful knee replacement surgery at Johns Hopkins Hospital, performed by Dr. Patricia Richardson with the precision and excellence that had attracted patients from throughout the Mid-Atlantic region, seeking the highest quality orthopedic care. The surgical procedure had proceeded flawlessly, with no complications or unexpected difficulties that might have extended my hospital stay or created additional recovery requirement. Richardson's post-operative instructions were standard for knee replacement patients: limited mobility for the first 72 hours, no driving for 2 weeks, and a need for assistance with basic activities like grocery shopping, meal preparation, and transportation to follow-up appointment.
These weren't unusual demands or excessive requests. They represented the basic medical protocol that any responsible family member would understand and accommodate without hesitation. My discharge planning had been coordinated weeks in advance, with Marcus confirming his availability to provide transportation from the hospital and assistance with essential errands during my initial recovery period. During our conversation on September, he had assured me that his residency schedule would accommodate my post-surgical needs, and that helping his elderly aunt with grocery shopping and basic errands represented a simple family obligation that wouldn't interfere with his professional responsibility. "Of course I can help you with groceries and getting around after your surgery, Aunt Eleanor," Marcus had said during our planning conversation, displaying the kind of family consideration and elderly care awareness that had always characterized our relation. "Recovery from knee replacement is serious business, and you shouldn't be trying to manage heavy lifting or extensive walking during those first few weeks. Just call me when you're ready for discharge, and I'll handle whatever you need." The confidence and genuine concern that Marcus had expressed during our pre-surgical planning created legitimate expectations for family support that represented basic human decency rather than unusual burden or excessive demand. His understanding of my medical needs and his commitment to providing assistance had been documented in my discharge planning materials and created the foundation for post-operative coordination that should have proceeded smoothly and without complications. But what I discovered on October, that Marcus's commitment to family assistance had been systematically reevaluated through the lens of professional optimization and career advancement priorities that treated elderly relatives like optional obligations, competing with medical training opportunities. The transformation that had occurred in his thinking about family responsibilities revealed months of strategic calculation about relationship management and resource allocation that prioritized professional networking over traditional family values. When I called Marcus at 2:15 p.m. from my Johns Hopkins Hospital discharge room to confirm our arranged transportation and coordinate my grocery shopping assistance, his immediate response revealed the systematic nature of his approach to family obligation management and his professional prioritization of medical career advancement over elderly care responsibility. The conversation that followed would become the documented evidence of character priorities that justified implementing the most comprehensive foundation intervention in medical education history. "Aunt Eleanor, I'm really sorry, but I can't leave the hospital right now," Marcus announced with obvious professional urgency that contrasted sharply with his previous commitment to family assistance. "I'm in the middle of a critical case presentation with Dr. Harrison, the emergency medicine department chair, and this could be the opportunity that determines my fellowship placement and entire future career trajectory. This isn't something I can just walk away from to handle transportation logistics." The phrase transportation logistics revealed Marcus's fundamental transformation in understanding family medical support, reducing post-surgical assistance to procedural inconvenience rather than essential family obligation and elderly care responsibility. His casual dismissal of my medical needs demonstrated complete disregard for the vulnerability and recovery requirements that distinguished post-operative patient care from routine transportation convenience. "You're going to need to find another way home," Marcus continued with the kind of systematic dismissal that reflected months of strategic planning about family relationship optimization and elderly obligation minimization. "Call an Uber or ask hospital transportation services to arrange something. I know it's not ideal, but this presentation with Dr. Harrison represents years of preparation and professional development work, and I can't compromise my fellowship opportunities for errands that can be solved through alternative arrangements."
The systematic nature of Marcus's dismissal became apparent through his confident assumption that elderly relatives should accommodate professional priorities through alternative arrangements and independent problem-solving that prioritized career advancement over family loyalty and medical support responsibility. His comfortable delegation of post-surgical care to commercial services reflected character calculations that treated family obligation as optional inconveniences, interfering with medical networking and professional development opportunities. But the conversation that continued revealed the depth of Marcus's systematic approach to elderly relationship management and his complete transformation from family consideration to professional optimization, thinking that treated my post-surgical needs as complication requiring independent resolution rather than family responsibility deserving immediate attention and priority consideration. Aunt Eleanor, honestly, you need to understand that my medical career has to come first right now, Marcus explained while reviewing his presentation materials and coordinating with other residents competing for the same fellowship opportunity. This presentation could determine whether I get accepted into the Emergency Cardiology Fellowship at Mass General, which would transform my entire professional trajectory and establish me as one of the leading emergency medicine specialists in the country. I can't let family logistics interfere with opportunities like this. The business development language that Marcus employed revealed his systematic approach to family relationship management and his professional calculation that elderly relatives should accommodate career opportunities, independent medical coordination, and commercial transportation arrangement. The comfortable assumption that post-surgical assistance represented logistics rather than family medical responsibility demonstrated character priorities that distinguished professional advancement from traditional family values and elderly care obligation.
Besides, Marcus continued with the confident dismissal that reflected his systematic transformation in family relationship management. You're not really my responsibility anyway. You're an independent adult who chose to have this surgery, and you should have planned better for your post-operative needs, instead of assuming that family members would be available to drop everything and provide services that you can arrange through professional healthcare providers. The phrase, "you're not my responsibility," represented the culmination of months of strategic thinking about family relationship optimization and the systematic dismissal of traditional values that distinguished meaningful family connections from professional networking calculations. The casual confidence with which Marcus delivered this devastating dismissal revealed his complete transformation from family loyalty to career advancement, prioritization that treated elderly relatives like optional expenses rather than deserving family members. I have to focus on building my medical career and establishing myself as a leading emergency medicine specialist, Marcus concluded while preparing for his fellowship presentation. That means making strategic decisions about how I invest my time and energy, and right now, family obligations just can't compete with professional opportunities that could determine my entire future in academic medicine. The systematic language that Marcus used to justify his elderly dismissal revealed months of strategic consultation and professional optimization thinking that had convinced him that family loyalty was less important than career advancement, and that traditional generational values should be subordinated to medical residency success and fellowship positioning. The calculated approach that he had developed for managing family obligations reflected character priorities that would determine his continued access to educational funding and lifestyle support. As I sat alone in my Johns Hopkins Hospital discharge room arranging for a rideshare driver while recovering from major surgery and processing the devastating reality of Marcus's systematic abandonment during medical vulnerability, I had time to reflect on the $2.3 million in educational funding that Marcus considered automatic support and the Foundation administration protocols that could either continue supporting his comfortable lifestyle or redirect those resources to serve medical students who understood the value of elderly wisdom and family loyalty. The irony of being dismissed as not his responsibility by the family member whose medical career depended entirely on the educational funding and financial support that I had been coordinating and protecting throughout his professional development was not lost on me. The systematic dismissal that I had experienced during post-surgical vulnerability represented exactly the kind of character evidence that justified implementing comprehensive foundation review protocols and scholarship reconsideration procedures that could transform expected distributions into community benefit coordination and charitable asset redistribution. The comfortable assumptions that Marcus maintained about automatic educational funding and guaranteed financial support reflected his complete ignorance of the family loyalty requirements and beneficiary conduct evaluations that distinguish deserving scholarship recipients from those requiring character assessment and funding redistribution. The confident decision to prioritize fellowship presentations over elderly medical support would become the documented foundation for consequences that revealed the true relationship between family respect and educational privilege, between traditional values and scholarship, and between the elderly relatives whose expertise created educational opportunities and the family members whose character determined whether those opportunities continued or were redirected to serve more deserving recipients. The rideshare driver who eventually arrived at Johns Hopkins Hospital to transport me home was a kind elderly gentleman named Samuel who expressed genuine concern about my post-surgical condition and provided the careful assistance and respectful support that my own nephew had refused to offer during my medical vulnerability. The contrast between Samuel's compassionate stranger care and Marcus's systematic family abandonment provided additional evidence of character priorities that would influence scholarship distribution decisions and foundation administration modification. Sometimes the most expensive mistake you can make is assuming that educational funding and financial support are automatic entitlements that continue regardless of how elderly relatives are treated during medical emergencies and family support needs. The fellowship presentation that Marcus sharedized over family medical assistance would become the documented evidence of character priorities that justified redirecting scholarship assets and educational distributions to serve medical students who understood the value of both financial resources and the elderly relatives' expertise and family loyalty had created opportunities for meaningful medical careers and lasting professional legacy development. What Marcus never understood during all those years of treating me like a simple retiree who needed assistance with modern technology and medical appointments was his comfortable assumption about my limited capabilities revealed his complete ignorance of the pharmaceutical empire I had built throughout the North American medical education community, an empire that operated so seamlessly and efficiently that its very invisibility had become its greatest strength and Marcus's most dangerous vulnerability. The evening of October 3rd, as I recovered from surgery in my modest Canton apartment, while Marcus celebrated his successful fellowship presentation with colleagues at Baltimore's most expensive restaurant, I began accessing the comprehensive foundation management systems that would transform his comfortable assumptions about educational entitlements into the most expensive lesson about family respect and elderly wisdom that any medical resident had ever received. At 9:47 p.m., I initiated the first phase of what would become the most comprehensive beneficiary review in medical education history by accessing the Whitfield Foundation's secure database systems and implementing scholarship eligibility assessment status for Marcus James Caldwell's educational funding account. The administrative classification that I applied indicated potential beneficiary conduct violations requiring comprehensive character assessment throughout the North American Medical Education Network. The beneficiary assessment protocols that I activated included comprehensive coordination that affected Marcus's scholarship verification systems, educational loan documentation, financial aid status and fellowship funding eligibility that determined his access to continued medical training and professional development opportunities. The systematic nature of the classification modifications ensured that every platform and system connected to his educational expectations experienced changes that created immediate complications for his fellowship applications and long-term consequences for his medical career security and financial planning assumption. By 10:15 p.m., the first automated notifications had been generated by Foundation systems that detected beneficiary irregularities affecting Marcus's educational status and scholarship coordination assessment. The alert protocols that I had implemented included medical school notification requirements that triggered immediate evaluation of funding distribution eligibility and educational coordination assessment that could affect his financial planning calculations and continued educational access based on character evaluation standards and family loyalty verification protocols. Systematic foundation actions that I implemented over the following 72 hours would transform Marcus's comfortable assumptions about educational entitlements and beneficiary privileges into the most comprehensive demonstration of philanthropic authority that the medical education community had ever witnessed. The evidence that I had compiled included every instance of his systematic elderly dismissal, every conversation about family relationship optimism, and every strategic decision to treat family respect as optional expenses, interfering with professional objectives and fellowship positioning requirements. The first immediate impact of my foundation modifications became apparent when Marcus attempted to access his quarterly education distribution at 8:30 a.m. on October 4th, and discovered that his scholarship accounts had been classified as under beneficiary review pending character assessment by the North American Medical Education Authority. The panic that followed his discovery revealed the extent to which his medical training and comfortable lifestyle depended on educational distributions and foundation coordination that he had never understood or appreciated during his systematic elderly dismissal and family relationship optimism. The panicked phone call that I received came from Marcus at 9:15 a.m., with obvious desperation and confusion about the administrative complications that were affecting his educational access and fellowship financial planning. "Aunt Eleanor, something terrible is happening with my scholarship accounts and medical school financing," he announced with the kind of professional emergency language that revealed his immediate understanding of catastrophic educational implications. "My funding distributions have been suspended, and medical schools are asking for documentation about beneficiary conduct evaluation and family loyalty verification." The conversation that followed revealed Marcus's sudden recognition that the elderly aunt he had systematically dismissed from his professional lifestyle might possess administrative capabilities and foundation authority that could affect his educational eligibility and financial security in ways he had never imagined or prepared for during months of strategic family relationship management and medical career development consultation. The Johns Hopkins Financial Aid Office is requesting immediate documentation about my scholarship status and character assessment verification. Marcus continued with growing panic about the implications for his fellowship applications and educational security planning. "This is affecting my residency standing and potentially compromising my fellowship interviews with programs that require verified educational backing and accurate financial positioning." The systematic consequences that continued throughout the week included medical school evaluation procedures that questioned his scholarship documentation and character assessment verification, educational planning investigations that could affect his residency standing and fellowship status, and regional coordination inquiries about beneficiary classification changes that required extensive documentation and administrative review to resolve through proper channels and verification process. But perhaps the most devastating immediate impact was the effect on Marcus's fellowship applications and medical career advancement negotiations that required verified educational backing and accurate financial positioning to maintain competitive standing and premium training opportunities. The fellowship interviews that he had scheduled, based on his guaranteed educational funding, became impossible to complete when medical programs discovered that his primary financial backing no longer qualified for verified scholarship status or exclusive medical training finance. The prestigious fellowship opportunities that Marcus had been pursuing with Mass General, Cleveland Clinic, and Mayo Clinic required verified educational backing and accurate financial positioning that distinguished authentic medical training from temporary arrangements and questionable funding management that didn't reflect genuine educational stability and professional credibility. The scholarship classification complications that I had implemented triggered immediate fellowship review and potential application suspension that could affect his annual career projections and medical training advancement. By the end of the first week, the comprehensive nature of Marcus's educational classification complications had generated legal consultation fees exceeding $28,000, administrative documentation requirements that consumed over 60 hours of his professional time, and financial standing complications that required extensive verification procedures and potential lifestyle restructuring based on scholarship status uncertainty and foundation administration challenge. The second week brought expanded consequences as automated systems continued detecting classification irregularities that affected his medical licensing applications, residency programs, standing verification, and professional background checks that fellowship programs required for advanced training position eligibility. The systematic nature of the classification modifications created cascading effects throughout his educational and professional life that required extensive time investment and legal consultation to understand and address through proper administrative channels. Marcus's position within the Johns Hopkins Elite Resident Leadership Program came under review when educational background verification systems detected scholarship classification irregularities and financial standing complications that raised questions about his judgment and administrative reliability. The professional consequences that followed included delayed performance reviews, reduced program responsibility, and program committee discussions about leadership qualification standards that required clean educational records and verified financial stability for continued program eligibility and advancement opportunities. Marcus's fellowship applications faced immediate program cancellations and suspensions when medical institutions discovered that his primary educational backing and scholarship distributions no longer met the verified funding requirements for competitive fellowship training and advanced medical education opportunity. The systematic loss of fellowship opportunities and interview cancellations created professional pressure that affected his ability to maintain his medical career trajectory and continue his advancement in emergency medicine specialization. During the third week of educational classification consequences, Marcus's desperation reached a critical point that would transform this story from simple foundation administration into a profound lesson about family values and character accountability. The medical career that he had built through systematic professional advancement and strategic family relationship optimization was crumbling under the weight of foundation review protocols that measured not only academic competence, but also character integrity and family value. When Marcus called me on October 24th with genuine tears in his voice and authentic remorse for his systematic dismissal of elderly family members, something remarkable began to happen that would transform this story from simple educational administration into a profound lesson about family values and character development. The confident medical resident, who had dismissed me as not his responsibility, had been replaced by a young man who finally understood the connection between family respect and professional privilege, between elderly wisdom and educational. "Aunt Eleanor, I've made the most terrible mistake of my life," Marcus said during our emotional conversation that would mark the beginning of his character transformation. "I was so focused on my medical career that I completely lost sight of what really matters: family respect for elderly relatives, and understanding that success means nothing if you achieve it by dismissing the people who love and support you." The genuine remorse that Marcus expressed during our conversation represented the first authentic character development that he had demonstrated since beginning his medical training. His recognition that professional achievement without family loyalty was meaningless success revealed the kind of character growth that distinguished deserving educational support from temporary funding suspension. But rather than simply resuming his educational funding and allowing him to continue his medical training without consequence, I proposed something that would serve both character development and community benefit, while creating opportunities for authentic family healing and meaningful professional growth. The alternative that I developed would become the most innovative educational intervention in medical history and the foundation for Marcus's transformation from systematic elderly dismissal to authentic family engagement and community service. Instead of permanently suspending Marcus's educational distributions, I created the Family Legacy Medical Service Program that would operate for 18 months, providing medical care coordination and elderly health support for low-income seniors, while requiring Marcus's direct participation in community health services under my supervision as program coordinator. The program would serve over 200 elderly community members during its operation, while creating opportunities for Marcus to learn about family responsibility and elderly appreciation that distinguished meaningful medical practice from superficial professional advance. The Family Legacy Medical Service Program that we developed would require Marcus to work alongside experienced geriatric specialists, community health workers, and elderly care professionals who understood the value of traditional wisdom and generational respect, while providing essential medical services to underserved elderly populations throughout Baltimore and the greater Maryland region. The program would combine Marcus's emergency medicine training with community health education that served both individual patient needs and broader elderly care advocacy. But perhaps the most significant aspect of the program was the requirement that Marcus work directly under my supervision as program coordinator, learning about foundation administration and medical education infrastructure that had been supporting his comfortable lifestyle throughout his systematic assumption that medical training was self-funded rather than earned through character development and elderly respect. The transformation that began during the first month of the Family Legacy Medical Service Program exceeded even my own expectations for what community service could accomplish when combined with character accountability and elderly recognition. Marcus's initial reluctance to participate in hands-on elderly care work gradually evolved into genuine appreciation for the seniors we served and understanding of the administrative expertise required for effective foundation, coordination, and medical education management. The elderly community members who worked alongside Marcus in the Family Legacy Medical Service Program included retired physicians, former nurses, experienced healthcare administrators, and community advocates whose lifetime of service and professional expertise provided daily examples of the elderly wisdom and community contribution that Marcus had dismissed during his systematic family relationship restructuring and medical career optimization strategies. Margaret Chen, an 84-year-old retired internist who had spent 50 years providing medical care to Baltimore's underserved communities, became particularly influential in helping Marcus understand the connection between family respect and medical responsibility. "Young man," she told Marcus during their 4th week of working together, "I've seen thousands of medical students over the years, and I can tell you that the most successful physicians always start with families that understand how to honor their elderly members and learn from generational wisdom." The medical service training that Marcus received alongside 79-year-old retired emergency nurse William Rodriguez, who had operated Baltimore's most respected emergency departments for 35 years before retirement, provided daily demonstrations of how professional expertise and elderly experience could combine to create medical care that exceeded anything achievable through individual achievement or professional optimization. Rodriguez's traditional medical principles and community engagement values challenged Marcus's assumptions about medical success and professional satisfaction in ways that fellowship training had never provided. The elderly care responsibilities that Marcus assumed under my supervision in coordinating community outreach, patient advocacy, and service distribution provided him with genuine understanding of foundation expertise and the administrative complexity required for effective educational coordination. His work developing educational materials for the Family Legacy Medical Service Program
when focused on community benefit rather than professional positioning, revealed his capacity for meaningful medical contribution and authentic community engagement. The 18 months of Family Legacy Medical Service Program operation created measurable community impact that included coordinating medical care for over 200 elderly community members, providing health education to training 67 community members in elderly care and medical advocacy, and creating ongoing support networks that continued serving seniors long after the formal program concluded. The success of the program attracted attention from foundation administrators throughout North America and established a model for family-based medical education that honored both community needs and intergenerational collaboration. But perhaps the most significant transformation was the change in Marcus's understanding of family relationships and the value of elderly wisdom in creating meaningful medical practice. His systematic elderly dismissal and medical career optimization strategies were replaced by genuine appreciation for my foundation expertise and recognition of how family respect and community service could create professional satisfaction and personal fulfillment that exceeded anything achievable through competitive fellowship training and academic medical advance. The medical career that Marcus rebuilt after completing his community service focused on providing geriatric emergency medicine and elderly care coordination rather than competitive fellowship training and academic positioning. His work developing senior emergency protocols, healthcare programs, and community-centered medical services generated meaningful professional satisfaction while providing genuine community contribution that distinguished authentic medical practice from superficial career success and systematic family dismissal. Marcus's approach to medical practice evolved to include nonprofit healthcare coordination and community health initiatives that leveraged his emergency medicine expertise for elderly benefit and family care support. His work developing medical strategies for elderly community organization, senior care facilities provided professional advancement opportunities while creating authentic community impact and family pride that exceeded anything he had achieved through systematic elderly dismissal and career optimization. The modest apartment in Baltimore's Fells Point neighborhood, where Marcus moved during his community service period, costing $1,800 monthly and providing comfortable living without luxury presentation requirement, became the foundation for authentic family relationships and community engagement, rather than systematic medical career development and elderly relationship management. The simple furnishings and traditional family activities that characterized his transformed lifestyle reflected genuine values and priorities that distinguished lasting happiness from temporary professional positioning and systematic family disrespect. 5 years later, Marcus's transformation had become a model for family-based medical education throughout North America, with his story featured in medical education publication and foundation journals as an example of how educational intervention could create family healing and authentic community engagement. His work coordinating the annual Maryland Family Medical Responsibility Network, which operated in 23 communities throughout the state, provided ongoing opportunities for meaningful contribution while maintaining the family relationships and elderly respect that he had learned through his medical service experience. The Baltimore home where Marcus now lived with his wife Sarah, a geriatric social worker whom he met during his community service, provided comfortable family living while supporting their elderly care work and maintaining proximity to the senior community members and family relatives whose wisdom and support had created the foundation for their transformation. The modest but elegant home that served as both family residence and occasional community meeting venue reflected their understanding that true satisfaction came from authentic relationships and community contribution, rather than competitive medical positioning and systematic elderly dismissal. Marcus's current position as Community Geriatric Emergency Coordinator at the University of Maryland Medical Center, earning $145,000 annually, while coordinating elderly emergency care and family medical education throughout the region, provided meaningful professional work that honored both his medical expertise and his commitment to community service and family values. His work developing geriatric emergency protocols and accessible healthcare programs throughout Maryland created genuine impact, while maintaining the family relationships and elderly respect that distinguished authentic success from superficial professional advancement. The Whitfield Foundation scholarship that I reestablished for Marcus after his successful completion of the Family Legacy Medical Service Program was restructured to include ongoing community service requirements and annual character assessments that ensured continued family respect and elderly appreciation. The scholarship structure required quarterly volunteer coordination with elderly community members and annual family loyalty verification that distinguished deserving educational recipients from those who might revert to systematic elderly dismissal and medical career optimization. As I write this final chapter from my beautiful Annapolis waterfront home, purchased with proceeds from my foundation consultation work and serving as both family residence and educational coordination center, I'm surrounded by family photographs that document our journey toward authentic relationships and mutual respect, professional commendation that honor my career achievement, and community recognition that celebrates the Family Legacy Medical Service Program's ongoing impact throughout the Mid-Atlantic region. The nephew who told me "you're not my responsibility" discovered that respect for elderly relatives isn't optional accommodation, it's the foundation. Educational eligibility and scholarship coordination that determines whether families build meaningful legacies or destroy opportunities through systematic dismissal of generational wisdom and traditional values that created every educational advantage they considered evidence of individual achievement and personal success. The modest hospital room where I had been abandoned during medical vulnerability became the foundation for a medical education program that served hundreds of elderly community members while teaching my nephew about the critical importance of elderly respect and family loyalty. The systematical career development strategy that had been used to exclude an elderly family member was transformed into community service that demonstrated how foundation and menstruation and family healing could create opportunities for authentic contribution and meaningful professional satisfaction. But perhaps the most important legacy of this experience has been the broader recognition throughout the North American medical education community that elderly expertise and traditional family values provide the foundation for sustainable medical practice and meaningful educational relations. The hundreds of medical students who have participated in Family Legacy Medical Service programs understand that respecting elderly relatives and maintaining family loyalty creates opportunities for authentic community engagement and lasting professional satisfaction. My foundation consultation work continues, expanding throughout North America, with medical education administrators in 15 countries implementing our family-based scholarship models that honor both educational responsibility and intergenerational respect. The global recognition of our approach to elderly inclusion and family-centered medical education has created opportunities for meaningful contribution to healthcare education worldwide.
The Whitfield Institute for Medical Education Excellence has established the Marcus James Caldwell Fellowship for Family-Based Medical Practice, providing annual scholarships for medical students who demonstrate both clinical competence and commitment to elderly respect and family engagement in their healthcare work. The fellowship program ensures that future medical professionals understand the importance of intergenerational collaboration and family values in creating sustainable medical practice and authentic community impact. Remember, educational funding and scholarship coordination aren't guaranteed family privileges. They're earned recognition of demonstrated character and elderly respect that creates foundation for professional credibility and authentic medical practice. The scholarship accounts that discipline educational access and became community service requirements, taught Marcus about the true meaning of foundation administration and the critical importance of honoring the elderly wisdom that distinguished lasting medical responsibility from superficial career presentation and systematic family dismissal. The foundation empire that had operated invisibly throughout Marcus's comfortable assumptions became the visible foundation for his transformation into an authentic medical professional who understood that true healthcare success comes from serving others while respecting the elder relatives, whose wisdom and expertise created opportunities for meaningful contribution rather than competitive fellowship training and systematic generational dismissal that prioritized career management over authentic relationships and community values. Sometimes the most valuable lesson you can teach ungrateful family members is that educational privilege isn't automatic entitlement, it's earned recognition that continues only when families demonstrate appropriate respect for elderly wisdom and traditional values that create the foundation for authentic medical practice and foundation administration. The scholarship coordination that had protected Marcus's comfortable lifestyle became the foundation for his transformation into a community servant who understood that true success comes from serving others while honoring the elderly relatives, whose lifetime of expertise and service created every opportunity for authentic contribution and family legacy development. The educational funding that served systematic elderly dismissal became the heart of a community program that coordinated care for hundreds while teaching the most important lesson of all: respect for elderly relatives isn't just family courtesy, it's the foundation for scholarship eligibility and authentic medical practice that distinguishes meaningful contribution from superficial career presentation and systematic dismissal of the generational wisdom that creates opportunities for lasting impact and authentic professional satisfaction in service to others.